Good morning. It is Sunday Fun Day with God, right? So, I think I'm gonna start this new thing where I just put Fun Day after the beginning of everything. Not that like Sunday Fun Day, Monday Fun Day, Tuesday. That doesn't rhyme. Tuesday. I'll figure it out. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so it only works with for Monday and Monday, Sunday and Monday because of the U's or no, the O's that sound like U. No, Sunday is spelled with a U. Monday sounds like it's with a U, so it matches with Fun Day. So I don't know. We're gonna do Monday and Sunday and Monday, Fun Day with God. Okay, and then I'm gonna figure out what I can do for Tuesday through Saturday. If I have the availability to go live those days. But right now, we are going to be watching this person's videos. We're going to be checking out the Bible Project channel. So I just came across this channel literally a few minutes ago because I was trying to figure out what we should do for Sunday. And I found this. So we're going to check out this person's channel. Like I said, it's called the Bible Project or Bible Project. So, um, let's see. Let's go to one of their playlists. Let's see. Is there one with 2 videos? Or maybe 4. There's an Exodus vocab with 4 videos. Help from the Bible managing and resolving is unavoidable. I don't know. Is in resolving. So we could do one. We could do one with 4 videos and then watch 2 today and 2 tomorrow because I do only have enough time to watch 2 videos, I'm pretty sure, before I have to head to work. Because even though today is Sunday and we're supposed to rest on the Sabbath, I kind of don't have a choice on going to work because no one wants to work on Sundays, so they make it mandatory that I work on Sundays since I was just newly hired like a few months ago. So like if I was working there for like maybe 3 years by now, I would have been like, okay, it's been long enough. I'm not working Sunday. But since like I'm just newly hired, I don't feel like I have the right to say that I am not available on Sundays, especially because I kind of tried already and they denied it. But let's just focus on this, right? So, let's see. Okay, so they don't have a lot of playlists, which is fine. Advent words, character of God studies, process series, choosing your video topics. I saw one that I think was good. Where is it? This one right here. Get a biblical perspective on God's justice. I'm gonna watch this one with you guys.
If you were a praying mantis, it would be socially acceptable to devour your mate.
And if you're a honey badger, you have no regard for other animals. You don't care.
If you're a panda with twins, it's normal to abandon one to take care of the other.
But if
What?
humans do any of these things, we would call it wrong, unfair, or
Yeah.
unjust.
Yeah, why is that? Why do humans care so much about justice?
Well, the Bible has a fascinating response to that question. On page 1, humans are set apart from all other creatures as
I'm just gonna let you know now. If you see that my avatar's mouth is open, it's because I'm currently eating my breakfast. Which, thank you God for this amazing breakfast that I was able to make. I'm currently eating my breakfast. That's why my character's mouth might be open randomly while I'm not speaking, or it might be picking up like the background fan noise. Who knows? Okay, back to the video.
the image of God.
Yeah, God's representatives who rule the world by his definition of good and evil.
And this identity, it's the bedrock of the Bible's view of justice. All humans are equal before God and have the right to be treated with dignity and fairness no matter who you are.
And that would be nice if we all did that. But we know how the world really works.
And the Bible addresses that too. It shows how we are constantly redefining good and evil to our own advantage at the expense of others.
Yeah,
Yes.
self-preservation. And the weaker someone is,
I have
the
done that
easier it
before.
is to take advantage of them.
I
And
can
so in the
admit to that.
biblical story, we see this happening on a personal level, but also in families, and then in communities, and in whole civilizations that create injustice.
Actually, I've been doing that to
especially toward the
myself.
vulnerable. But the story doesn't end there. Out of this whole mess, God chose a man named Abraham to start a new kind
Abraham.
of family. Specifically, Abraham was to teach his family to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice.
Yeah, doing righteousness, that's a Bible word I don't really use, but what comes to mind is being a good person.
But what does that even mean, being good? The biblical Hebrew word for righteousness is tzedakah, and it's more specific. It's an ethical standard that refers to right relationships between people. It's about treating others as the image of God.
With the God-given dignity they deserve.
And this word justice, it's the Hebrew word mishpat. It can refer to retributive justice.
Like if I steal something, I pay the consequences.
Exactly. Yet most often in the Bible, mishpat refers to restorative justice. It means going a step further, actually seeking out vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of and helping them.
Yeah, some people call this charity.
But mishpat involves way more. It means taking steps to advocate for the vulnerable and changing social structures to prevent injustice.
So justice and righteousness are about a radical, selfless way of life.
Yeah, and you find this idea all over the Bible. Like here, in the book of Proverbs, what does it mean to bring about just righteousness?
Open your mouth for those who can't speak for themselves.
And what do these words mean for the prophets, like Jeremiah?
Rescue the disadvantaged, and don't tolerate oppression or violence against the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow.
And like here, look in the book of Psalms.
The Lord God upholds justice for the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, and sets the prisoner free. But he thwarts the way of the wicked. Whoa, he thwarts the wicked?
Yeah, in Hebrew, the word wicked is rasha. It means guilty or in the wrong. It refers to someone who mistreats another human, ignoring their dignity as an image of God.
So justice and righteousness is a big deal to God.
Yes, it's what Abraham's family, the Israelites, were to be all about. They ended up as immigrant slaves, being oppressed unjustly in Egypt. And so God confronted Egypt's evil, declaring them to be rasha, guilty of injustice. And so he rescued Israel. But the tragic irony of the Old Testament story is that these redeemed people went on to commit the same acts of injustice against the vulnerable. And so God sent prophets who declared Israel guilty.
But they weren't the only ones. There's injustice everywhere.
Yeah, some people actively perpetrate injustice. Others receive benefits or privileges from unjust social structures they take for granted. And sadly, history has shown that when the oppressed gain power, they often become oppressors themselves.
So
Yeah.
we all participate in injustice, actively or passively, even unintentionally. We're all the guilty ones.
And so this is the surprising message of the
Oh my
biblical
goodness.
story. God's
This makes me wanna
response to
cry.
humanity's legacy of injustice is to give us a gift, the life of Jesus. He did righteousness and justice, and yet he died on behalf of the guilty. But then God declared Jesus to be the righteous one when he rose from the dead. And so now Jesus offers his life to the guilty so that they too can be declared righteous before God, not because of anything they've done, but because of what Jesus did for them.
The earliest followers of Jesus experienced this righteousness from God, not just as a new status, but as a power that changed their lives and compelled them to act in surprising new ways.
Yeah, if God declared someone righteous when they didn't deserve it, the only reasonable response is to go and seek righteousness and justice for others.
This is a radical way of life, and it's not always convenient or easy. It's courageously making other people's problems my problems.
This is what Jesus meant by loving your neighbor as yourself. It's about a lifetime commitment fueled by the words of the ancient prophet Micah. God has told you, humans, what is good and what the Lord requires of you is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Hey, this is John and Tim from the Bible Project. Thanks for watching this video. This was a
Oh,
theme
that
video where
that
we
got
take
me
one
emotional.
biblical
My
motif
goodness.
and trace it from beginning to end. We also do a lot of other videos you can find here on our YouTube channel.
The Bible Project is a non-profit animation studio.
Like, that has me feeling a certain way because I've been put in situations where I know, like, where people are talking about other people or even myself, and it's like I so I've gotten good at not talking about people so much, but then it's like if other people around me start talking about people, I end up talking about people as well. And I can't really escape that because some of those people are my family. But I will be soon. I will be able to distance myself from that a little bit. But even the people I work with, like how I have to go to work in a few hours, the people I work with, they are constantly talking about other people that I work with, and instead of me feeling like I am able to call them out on it, that I can tell them that they shouldn't be doing that they shouldn't be saying that stuff, no matter if I find the person they're talking about annoying or something like that, it doesn't matter. They're still spreading hate towards that person because, like, and then the thing is, since they do it, I had started mentioning when the person came into work, because obviously I know that those people don't necessarily like the other people. So whenever the other people come into work, I end up going to the people that don't like them and be like, "Oh, hey, this person just came in," because that's just like I was trying to warn them, because when the people aren't there, they do things that they probably shouldn't be, or they're talking about that person. So I wanted to let them know that, hey, the person just walked in, so you probably don't want to be doing those things or talking about them. But I should probably be making it more direct and actually standing up for that person, those people, because like there is no reason for anyone to be speaking badly on anyone, especially if you only spend very minimum hours with those people, because at my job there are so many people they have hired there that they barely need anyone for a full 4 hours. Like, the max I've ever had to work was 5 or 6 hours. The least I ever had to work one time was 2 hours, but then they got in trouble because they found out that the minimum amount of hours they can have someone work is 3 hours, which they didn't know that because my manager didn't know that because they had just been like put as manager a few, like, last year. But yeah, no, I like I gotta stop talking about people because that's just me spreading hate on them and pretty much rubbing their name in the dirt, right? And we all do it. We all do it, like, all the time. Like, there is never a time where we don't. But, yeah. Let's get to the next video because I'm running low on
And
time
we're
before
crowdfunded,
work.
which means
There are three books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. The first, Proverbs, showed us that God is wise and just.
Yeah, we learned that God has ordered the world so that it's fair. The righteous are rewarded, the wicked are punished. In other words, you get what you deserve.
But then we meet Ecclesiastes, who observes, people don't always get what they deserve.
Yeah, he said the world isn't always fair, that life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend, just like smoke.
I'm sorry. I got distracted for a second. I just pulled up my Twitch chat. I think I just lost a follower, which is okay. That's perfectly fine. Well, let's go back to the video.
And this makes you wonder, okay, well, is God wise and just?
Exactly. And so it's that question that is being explored in the final book of wisdom, Job.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay,
Lord,
let me just
he's
back
Who
this up a little bit.
observes, people don't always get what they deserve.
Yeah, he said the world isn't always fair, that life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend, just like smoke.
And this makes you wonder, okay, well, is God wise and just?
Exactly. And so it's that question that is being explored in the final book of wisdom, Job.
Okay.
All right, let's dive in.
So Job begins with a strange story that takes place up in the heavens, which are described something like a heavenly command center. So God is there with these angelic creatures called the sons of God, and they're all there reporting for duty.
And God points out this guy Job, his servant, showing how righteous and good he is.
And then one of these angelic creatures approaches. He's referred to in Hebrew as the Satan.
The Satan. Who's this?
Well, this word is actually a title, which literally means the one who is opposed. So out of this whole crew, he is the one questioning how God is running the world. And he proposes that Job might not actually love God, that he's only a good person because God rewards him. If God were to take away all of the good things he gave to Job, then we would see his true colors.
So he thinks Job is just working the system?
That's exactly right. Maybe he's obeying just to get what he
Wait, so it was a
wants.
person
So
who said
God
that?
agrees to this experiment and allows
Or-
the Satan to inflict
Oh, no.
suffering on Job.
They're saying
And
Satan
Job
in a weird
loses
way.
everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for
Yeah.
chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes this poem that reveals this devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's
Yeah.
doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogues, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person, and God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined, and in places that we will never
I
see.
need to.
Then to conclude,
I need to read the story of Job. I really need to. Okay, since I think we're gonna have enough time, I'm gonna see if I can find a video after this with the a more explanation of the story of Job, because I don't know about you guys, but I at this moment feel like I can really relate to his suffering, rather than, like, nothing has been taken away from me, but I feel like due to my own mindset, I can't focus on God. I can't keep my mind on God, and the world is just slowly creeping in. And that's what back and forth happens with Job because of everything that the trials. And it's like, in a way, even though I'm not losing everything, it's just the mindset, the pure godly mindset I had like last week or 2 weeks ago is fading, and I'm trying to keep hold of that, but I have so much self-doubt that I've been hating on myself really badly. Like, you know how, like, his friends came to him and made lists of reasons why God would have done something like that, because God is just and all that stuff. That's what I'm doing to myself. I'm making reasons to why I am failing, why I feel like I'm falling and can't get back up. I am being like his friends were to him. I'm being like that to myself, and I really need to hear the whole, like, in-depth story of Job, and if I can't find a video talking about, like, the in-depth story of Job, I'm going to go into my Bible and figure out where the story of Job is, which I think there's literally the book of Job. I think. I'm not sure, but I'll figure it out.
God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So, where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
But that's not where the book ends, because after this, God restores to Job double everything he had lost. And this, again, is surprising. I mean, is this a reward? Is God saying, "Congratulations, Job, you passed this elaborate test"?
No, I mean, the whole book just made the point that Job losing everything was not a punishment, and so now getting it back isn't a reward.
So why does he get it back?
Well, apparently, God, in his wisdom, decided to give Job a gift. We don't know why. But what we do know is that Job is now the kind of person who, no matter what comes, good or bad, he can trust God's wisdom.
And that's the book of Job and the end of our wisdom series.
These biblical books of wisdom are amazing. Each one offers a unique perspective on the good life, and you need to hear all of them together as you learn to live with wisdom and in the fear of the Lord. Hey you guys, thank you for watching this video
Okay.
from the
So I think that this video was supposed to be part of another another thing, like another playlist, just due to the fact that it was talking about something else and it had 3 picture frames. This wisdom podcast series, I think it was part of this, but they put that in here because it's like get a biblical perspective on God's justice. So let's see. Oh, they have a summary of Job. Let's see what they say here.
Book of Job. It's a profound and very unique book in the Bible for lots of reasons. The story is set in a very obscure land that's far away from Israel, Uz. The main character, Job, he's not even an Israelite, and the author, who's anonymous, doesn't even set the story in any clear period of ancient history. This all seems intentional, though. It's like the author doesn't want us to be distracted by historical questions, but rather to focus simply on the story of Job and on the questions raised by his experience of suffering. The book of Job has a very clear literary design. It opens and closes with a short narrative prologue and then an epilogue. And then the central body of the book is dense Hebrew poetry, representing conversations between Job and 4 dialogue partners called the Friends. These conversations are then concluded by a series of poetic speeches given by God to Job. Let's dive in and we'll just see how it works together. The prologue introduces us to Job, and we're told that he's a blameless, upright man who honors God. He's a super good guy. And then all of a sudden, we're transported into the heavenly realms, and God is holding court with his staff team. It's a very common image in the Old Testament describing how God runs the world. And among the heavenly beings is a figure called the Satan, which in Hebrew means the accuser or the prosecutor. And it's like we're watching a court scene. God
So it's
presents
not-
Job as a
Okay, so I guess that's not. Either that is or isn't Satan, because from what I've been told, like in church and by other people, I think, I don't know, was that Satan went to God and like was telling God, oh, he only serves you because you've given him all this amazing stuff. I bet he won't serve you if you took away everything. Which they could just be saying Satan, but saying like Satan for some reason. Because Satan is called the accuser, because he causes people to do things and then makes them, well, he puts people in situations where they could choose the right way or the wrong way, and people usually choose the wrong way because the wrong way seems better or easier or simple or more intriguing. And that's why Satan is called the accuser, because Satan gives us options other than the good option, and then afterwards is like shoving it in our face. You chose the wrong option. That was you. You should be condemned for that. That's what Satan does. And that's why he's called the accuser. Right? That's how I think it is. I don't know. If you guys think it's something different, you just I don't know.
truly righteous
But you,
man.
what you
And then
think?
the accuser challenges God's policy of rewarding righteous people like Job. He says the only reason Job obeys you
Yeah,
is because
see?
you bless him with prosperity. Let Job suffer. Then we'll see how righteous he actually is.
That's crazy.
And then God agrees to let the accuser inflict suffering on Job. Now, it's at this point in the story that most of us go, what? Why did God do that? And then we assume that this book is going to answer that question, why God allows good people to suffer. But as you read on, the book doesn't answer that question. Nothing in the book ever answers that question. The prologue is setting up the real questions this book is trying to get at. Questions about God's justice and whether God operates the universe according to the strict principle of justice. And the response to those questions comes as you read through to the end of the book, not at the beginning. The ultimate reason for Job's suffering is simply never revealed. So the prologue concludes with a suffering and bewildered Job, who's rebuked by his wife, and he's approached by 3 friends who are going to try and provide wisdom and counsel. Their names are Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They're all non-Israelites like Job. And they represent the best of ancient Near Eastern thinking about God and suffering and the human condition, and this moves us into the main part of the book. First, Job speaks. And this is how this section of the book works. First, Job is going to speak, and then they'll follow a response from a friend. Then Job will respond to that friend. Then another friend will respond to Job's response, and so on back and forth for 3 cycles. And this whole debate is focused on 3 questions. Is God truly just in character? And does God run the universe on the strict principle of justice? And if so, then how is Job's suffering to be explained? As we're going to see, Job and the friends, they're working from a huge assumption about what God's justice ought to look like in the world. Namely, that every single thing that happens in the universe should operate according to the strict principle of justice. So if you're a wise, good person and you honor God, good things will happen to you. God will reward you.
Yeah.
But if you're evil and stupid and do sinful things, bad things will happen to you. God will punish you. Now,
Yeah, and that is our human concept of it, because we can't fully understand God. Like what it was saying in the last video is like God was showing Job all these incredible things about the world, which yes, we might see it, we might know visuals of what it is or how it works and stuff like that, but we don't have like the deeper meanings and understandings of what it is. Only God does. And that's why when we try to understand, like when we try to like not one person can say that they understand the Bible fully. That's not possible. Not unless God. Okay. So there are concepts in the Bible that we can try and understand, but then there's things that obviously we aren't knowledgeable enough to actually understand, and the only one with that knowledge is God himself. We can never acquire that knowledge because we are human. Like the tree that Adam and Eve ate from was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not of the knowledge of the universe. So obviously we are born knowing what is good and what is wrong, but we aren't born knowing every single fact in the existence of history, and that's almost impossible. So yeah, it's like we aren't able to have a full understanding of everything that God has done or said or anything like that. Like, there's people that are homeless out on the street, or not even homeless, but can't afford food, can only afford a place to live, can't afford food, electric, or anything like that. And, like, not even a vehicle. And they're just surviving paycheck to paycheck. And they're probably thinking, like, God, what's going on? Like, why are you doing this to me? Why haven't I gotten that promotion? Why haven't why hasn't anyone reached out to help me or whatever like that. And it's just like, it's either one of three things. Either God is testing them, God is putting them through this trial to see if they'll seek him in order for help, or God is doing that to teach them that they don't need to have a lot of money to survive, because there's ways you cannot have a lot of money and still survive. And it's just like, people who live life paycheck to paycheck, they have an understanding that money is temporary. Money is not everything. Money is just paper, right? Unlike people who always get money, because money is just paper to people who always get money, or money is just money to people who always get money, because obviously a lot of them don't use cash. But to people who have less money, money is just money due to the fact that they know ways, or they've learned the skills to live without needing to depend on money. So a lot of people who are homeless, who are living paycheck to paycheck and stuff like that, if they are constantly seeking God like Job was. Yes, Job doubted in sometimes, doubted in himself, doubted in God, doubted in the whole situation that was happening, but he continued to go back to God because he had nowhere else to go. He had no one else to go to, no one else to talk to, no one else to seek out, because after him losing everything, everyone abandoned him. He lost all the foods, his family, his house, everything. And then all the people who were around him also abandoned him because they saw everything bad that was happening to him and were like, oh, we don't want that. We don't want to put that on ourselves. You probably did something so terrible that God is taking everything away from you, and we don't want to be near someone like that, because what if that happens to us? That's how people around him were thinking. Rather than feeling like rather than pushing their feelings aside and trying to help him through the difficult times, they were condemning him and running away from him and accusing him of a bunch of stuff, and that was part of God's trial of his, because if he didn't go through all that, if he didn't go through people abandoning him and accusing him of a bunch of stuff, then he wouldn't have been able to solely depend on God only. And that's what the whole point of it was. The whole point of all the trials were to show Satan that Job didn't need people and fancy things and a ton of food in order to praise God and still seek God and worship God for everything. Yes, he doubted sometimes. It's human nature to have doubt, but God tells us, well, actually, it's only human nature because the devil has made it a normal thing, right? So it's only normal because Satan has made doubt, fear, stress, anxiety all normal things, even though God tells us that we shouldn't have those feelings, because there's nothing to fear but God himself. There's nothing to doubt at all. God has a plan in every single situation, so we shouldn't have any doubt. But it's just how we are as humans now, because there is so much wrong around us that there's just so much negativity and doubt, and it just sucks us in, and it feels unescapable. Let's keep watching this.
Now, Job's constant argument throughout his speeches is this. First of all, that he's innocent, and so the implication of that is that his suffering is not a divine punishment. Now, we know from the prologue both of these things are true. Remember, God himself said, Job is righteous and blameless. And so Job concludes his argument by accusing God. God either doesn't run the world according to justice, or even worse, God himself is simply unjust. The friends, on the other hand, they beg to differ. Their argument is that God is just, the implication being that God always runs the world according to justice in this way, and so they conclude by accusing not God, but Job. Job must have done something really, really bad for God to punish him like this. They even start making up possible sins that Job must have committed. Job protests to all of this. In fact, he gets so fed up with the friends that he eventually just gives up on them. He takes up his case directly with God. Now, something to be aware of is that Job, he's on an emotional roller coaster in these poems. He used to think that God is just, but now he can't reconcile that with his suffering. And so in some outbursts, Job, he'll accuse God of being a bully. Once he even declares that God has orchestrated all the injustice in the world. But the moment he utters that thought, he's terrified of it because he wants to hope and believe that God is truly just. Job is all over the place in this section. And so he makes one last statement of his innocence, and then he demands that God show up personally to explain himself. Now it's at this point that a surprise friend shows up, Elihu the Buzite. Now, he's not an Israelite, but he does have a Hebrew name. And Elihu, he has the same assumption as Job and the friends. He argues that God is just, and that implies that God always operates the universe according to justice. But then Elihu draws a more sophisticated conclusion about why good people suffer. It may not be punishment for sin in the past. God might inflict suffering as a warning to help people avoid sin in the future. Or God might use pain and suffering to build character or to teach people valuable lessons.
And that's what I was trying to get at. Because it literally says suffering may be a warning to avoid future sins because it builds character. If, like I said, if someone is living paycheck to paycheck or homeless, you see things as more valuable than other people do. You take things more meaningful. Like every little thing if you believe in God, every little thing you get, you will thank God for it. Every little thing, whether it's like a bag of chips, a water bottle, something small like that, you would literally drop to your knees and thank God because it's like, if you're truly homeless, if you're truly living paycheck to paycheck, those things mean so much to you because you know what it's like to have nothing. And I kind of hate how I am, not myself. I kind of hate my mindset on that because I am one of the people who used to not have anything. I always had stuff, but there were times when we lived paycheck to paycheck and times when we had no money at all. But obviously as a child, your parent hides that from you, and they try to make sure that you are okay and that you get everything you want and that you're living a good life no matter how horrible the circumstances are. And I know that's not everyone's situation and that some like people's parents aren't like that, but that's how mine was. And it was good. We were good. And I tend to forget that I had nothing I tend to forget a lot that we had nothing, not even a place to live. And I forget. And I start to become jealous of those who have more than me right now. And stuff like that. And it's just like, you used to have nothing. And now you have so much more. And you are still worried about what others have compared to you. And I'm talking about myself, guys. I'm talking about myself. Like, I have so much more than I used to have. And even though I do, I feel like it's not enough. Because that's how it is. Things of the world cannot fill you. Things of the world aren't going to be enough for you. They're never going to be enough. Because the only thing that can fill that hole that you have is God. Like, I've been going through like a really, like, I'd say depressive state, possibly because I'm on my period, but still, the TMI, right? It's just like, I've been very, very doubtful right now, and I've been hurting a lot of people that I care about and love, and I've just been hurting everyone, and it hurts me that I'm hurting them, but I can't put myself back into a good mindset where I won't be hurting anyone. It just feels like a cycle that I can't get myself out of, and it just feels like I can't go to God about it, which hurts me even more because, like, obviously I try to talk to God. I try, and that's why I'm watching these videos with you guys, because this is helping me too, because obviously we found the book of Job, and we're watching the two videos we watched. We ended up finding out about the book of Job, and I'm definitely gonna find out where the book of Job is in the Bible, and I'm gonna read it myself, because I feel like I need to read it from the Bible, because I have a New King James Bible, and I feel like it will be more informational than the video, because obviously the video takes like the main points from the Bible and makes it into the video, and they make it into a video, but I want everything. I want the full in-depth version of the story. I don't want anything taken out, not even if it's like a little word that the video didn't put in, that they didn't put in the video. Like, I just want to know everything. I don't want to miss a single subject in that book, in the story of Job. I don't want to miss anything. I want to know everything. So I'm gonna play I'm gonna get back to playing the video, because it is about to be like an hour before I have to go to work. So
Elihu doesn't claim to know why Job is suffering, but one thing he is certain of: Job is wrong to accuse God of being unjust. Job doesn't even respond to Elihu, and the dialogues come to a close. It's like the wisdom of the ancients has been spent, and the mystery remains. And then, all of a sudden, God shows up in a whirlwind, and he responds to Job personally. He first responds to Job's accusation that he's unjust and incompetent at running the universe. So God takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe, and he starts asking him all these questions about the order and origins of the cosmos. Was Job ever around when God architected the earth or organized the constellations? Has Job ever commanded the sunrise or controlled the weather? God has his eyes on all of these cosmic details that Job has never even conceived of. Then God starts going into detail describing the grazing habits of mountain goats and how deer give birth, or the feeding patterns of lions and wild donkeys. What's the point of all this? Remember the assumption of Job and his friends about what it looks like for God to run the world according to justice. Underneath that assumption is a deeper one, that Job and his friends have a wide enough perspective on life to make such a claim about how God ought to run the world. And God's response with this virtual tour, it deconstructs all of these assumptions. It first of all shows that the universe is a vast, complex place, and that God has his eyes on all of it, every detail. Job, on the other hand, has only the small horizon of his life experience to draw from. His view of the world is very limited. And so what looks like divine injustice, from Job's point of view, needs to be seen in an infinitely larger context. Job is simply not in a position to make such a huge accusation about God. After the virtual tour, God asks Job if he would like to micromanage the world for a day, according to the strict principle of justice that Job and his friends assume, punishing every evil deed of every person at every moment with precise retribution. The fact is that carrying out justice in a world like ours, it's extremely complex. It's never black and white.
Okay, hold on. I got a little distracted in my mind because God was saying, like, did Job want to be in control of the universe? And that just made me think of the movie with Jim Carrey, the Bruce Almighty, right? That's it? I'm not sure. But how he was put in control of accepting or not accepting everyone's prayers, right? So like in the movie, he's put in that position, and obviously that could be seen as like a mockery movie, right? But in this example that I'm going to be saying, it's like he's put in the position of where I haven't seen the movie in a long time, so all I know is that like the part where he's like typing super fast on the computer, like insanely fast, and he's just like super tired because all he's been doing is typing because he's answering people's prayers. And like that's pretty much what's happening here. It's like God is saying, would you want to be in control of all of these things that you do not see on a daily basis, that you do not understand on a daily basis, that you have never witnessed in your life? And that's what is going on. That's what happens in that movie. In that movie, he's put in control of things that he never hears about in his life, of people he's never seen before and stuff like that. And I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I feel like either they were just making that as a funny Jim Carrey movie, or they were making that based off of this as a like, what if God really did put someone else in control of something for a day or a few days or something like that? Like, we wouldn't be able to handle that. So yeah, but I literally got off topic. My mind like got distracted.
Like Job and the friends seem to think. Which leads to God's last point. He starts describing these two fantastic creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan, which some people think are poetic depictions of a hippo and a crocodile, but more likely they refer to well-known creatures from ancient Near Eastern mythology that are used elsewhere in the Bible as symbols of the disorder and danger that exist in God's good world. These creatures, they're not evil. God's actually quite proud of them, but they're not safe either. The point is that God's world is amazing and very good, but it's not perfect or always safe. God's world has order and beauty, but it's
Yeah.
also wild and sometimes dangerous, just like these two fantastic creatures. And so we come back to the big question of Job's suffering. Why is there suffering in God's world? Whether it's from earthquakes or wild animals or from other humans, God doesn't explain why. What he says is that we live in an extremely complex, amazing world that at this stage, at least, is not designed to prevent suffering. And that's God's response. Job challenged God's justice. God
Yeah.
responds that Job doesn't have sufficient knowledge about our universe to make such a claim. Job demanded a full explanation from God, and what God asked Job for is trust in his wisdom and character. And so, Job responds with humility and repentance. He apologizes for accusing God, and he acknowledges that he's overstepped his bounds. Then all of a sudden, the book concludes with a short epilogue. First, God says that the friends were wrong, that their ideas about God's justice were just too simple, not true to the complexity of the world or God's wisdom. And then God says that Job has spoken rightly about him. Now, this is surprising because it can't apply to everything Job said. I mean,
Yeah.
we know Job drew hasty and wrong conclusions, but God still approves of Job's wrestling, how Job came honestly before God with all of his emotion and pain and simply wanted to talk to God himself. And God
Yes,
says
because that's what
that's
God
the
wants
right
us
way to
to do.
process through all of this, through the struggle of prayer. The book concludes with Job having his health, his family, his wealth all restored. Not as a
The
reward
Book of
for good
Job is gonna
behavior,
call me
but
out
simply
so
as a
badly.
generous gift from God. And that's the end of the book. So the book of Job, it doesn't unlock the puzzle of why bad things happen to good people. Rather, it does invite us to trust God's wisdom when we do encounter suffering, rather than
Yes.
try and figure out the reasons for it. When we search for reasons, we tend to either simplify God like the friends,
Mhm.
or like Job, accuse God, but based on limited evidence. And so the book
Yes.
is inviting
That's
us
what I was
to
trying to say
honestly bring
earlier.
our pain and our grief to God, and to trust that God actually cares and that he knows what he's doing. And that's what the book of Job is all about.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's definitely I'm just gonna like reverse real quick because I
It's
want to
all
take a
about.
screenshot of this in order to put this as like the cover of the video, right, guys? Oh, okay. But yeah, no. The Book of Job is reading the Bible. Reading the Book of Job and the Bible, it's gonna call me out so badly. It's definitely gonna call me out so extremely badly. Like, I'm gonna try and get ready for work early so that I could like sit in the parking lot, blast music, and read the Book of Job. Like blast like K-Love or the Q99.7, right? If you guys know any of those stations. Yeah. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And are doing alright. I hope that if anything isn't okay, that it will be soon. Or that you will be okay soon. Yeah. I hope if anything that this video might have helped you in your perspectives or through whatever you're going through. I hope that this can help you, and that if anything you'll go out of your way to read the Book of Job or find the information from the videos we watched in the Bible yourself to get more of an understanding on it. And just thank you for sitting through this with me, even if I was talking way too much. because I turned the three very short videos into an hour-long video. So I apologize for that. But yeah, I'll see you guys the next time I make another video. Goodbye. God bless you guys. I will see you guys whenever else I make a video. I'm repeating myself because I'm forgetting my outro thingy I say. So goodbye. God bless you guys. I will see you guys next time. Bye.